Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm dropping a B2B SaaS SEO course that will quite literally show how you can rank for your most profitable keywords, drive more demo requests and generate more pipeline from your SEO efforts. So there's 7 steps involved in this course, from customer assessment and auditing to keyword and competitor research to building links, internal linking, content optimization, and everything in between. I also have the privilege of giving you a live walkthrough of how we ranked our client Suzanne HR in one of the most competitive industries, HR software, quite literally for the keyword HR software. So they're number 1 for HR software and number 1 for HR system. Now, these keywords are proven to drive hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of pipeline over the years, and I'm going to show you exactly what we did to get them there. Now, if you want full access to the course that I'm about to run you through, simply click the link in the description of this video. You'll be sent a Notion board that looks like this. This Notion board has the show notes to every video that I've ever created. Click the first link in the description and you will have a link right at the top here to this exact course. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. So the very first step is the customer assessment and audit. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I see from users is diving headfirst into doing keyword research without any context. And fundamentally, you need to understand how your prospects and subsequently how your customers have actually found you in the first place. Now, at the agency, whenever we onboard a new client, we send them a 19-page onboarding deck. And this is essentially a question that asks them everything to do with the business. Now, these questions give us all the insights we need, and we use this as essentially a bit of a Bible for that business, and all our strategic plans across SEO, paid media, and everything in between stem from this client insights document. Now, what I've done is I put this through Notebook and asked it to generate a blueprint that looks a little bit like this. So instead of taking you through all sort of 30 or 40 questions or so, whatever it is, now I'm not going to go through all of this in great deal because naturally you guys would just lose a bit of interest, but I do just want to emphasize the importance of asking the right questions. So typically from prospects, we would just ask essentially what their core products and USPs. We will ask who they target, so the types of profiles they're going after. We'll also ask for sort of audience exclusions. We'll ask questions around like why prospects don't choose them alongside why they do choose them. We'll ask them questions around sort of lifetime value and various sort of other things. And between all of these, we get a good sense of the industries that they're going after, the people that they're trying to target. And then this can feed into the keyword research piece that we subsequently run as well. The second best thing that you can do before diving into the keyword research without context is run a small Google Ads campaign if you haven't before, to understand what types of keywords actually trigger demo bookings, good conversations for sales team. Now, we were lucky with Suzanne that we had run a little bit of Google Ads before we kicked off an SEO campaign. So we could identify that HR software phrases actually drove the most pipeline out of all the different keywords that they had run. So this meant that this was a logical starting place for our SEO campaigns. And then the third thing that you can do is also doing a deep dive on the CRM. So we want to understand the types of questions that prospects have asked sales teams. We also want to understand qualitatively how they found the business as well. It's no good if they've come via Google, if they've seen us on YouTube for a year or been following our LinkedIn posts. It's really good to understand the context of how people find you. We then use all of these 3 points to start that keyword research. So what I'm going to do in the interest of the video and using Suzanne HR as an example is use HR software as the seed keyword to begin. Now, on the right-hand side, I've given a very broad step-by-step as to how you can do simple but highly impactful keyword research to identify the high-intent keywords that are actually going to drive those demo bookings and that pipeline into your business. Now, there's hundreds of ways that you can do keyword research. So this isn't the only way that things can be done. You can use your own tools. I'm going to use Ahrefs, but you can also use Surf. You can also use Keywords Everywhere. We've also built our own keyword research tool that I'll come on to in a little bit. But fundamentally, the process is broadly the same on all of them. So the first thing is to put in the C keyword. In our example here, this is HR software. And usually the keyword research tools give you a bit of context as to the value of that keyword. Now, Ahrefs, they provide a keyword difficulty metric. This is calculated by looking at the URLs that rank page 1 for this keyword and the number of backlinks that those URLs have. It's quite straightforward. It's not perfect though. So what else do we have? Of course, we have volume here, but volume is a tertiary sort of metric in all of this. One often overlooked and undervalued metric when doing keyword research is actually cost per click. Now, Ahrefs has said that the cost per click of this keyword HR software is around about the 60 cents. I can categorically tell you for a fact that that is not correct. We've had that reach over £100 per click in the past. And again, why is this such a good signal? Because if plenty of businesses are bidding on it, that tends to suggest that it has some nominal value to that business. So the more expensive the CPC, the more competitive, which usually means that there's good intent behind that keyword. And then the final thing that you can do is actually just having a look at the URLs that rank for that keyword as well. So what are we looking for here? We're looking for domains that are in direct competition with ourselves. So Suzanne HR, they're an HR software provider for SMB and mid-market. And as I scroll down, I can see Zelt HR, I can see Bright HR, I can see HiBob, all of which I know are competitors. We've got Sage, who are a bit more on the enterprise side. We've got Cypher, who again are direct competitors. We've got Safe HR. So I can look at this keyword, and between those sort of three metrics, the Venn diagram is sort of saying this is a good keyword to go after. What we now want to do is step 2, which is essentially refine on intent type. So this means that outside of HR software, we want to have a look at closely related terms that users are also searching to find an HR software solution. And if you scroll down to keyword ideas and terms match, we've got just over 4,500 that Ahrefs have picked up in their database. Now, this is far too many keywords for us to really look at realistically. So there's a couple of filters that you can apply here to really work these down to the high intent keywords that we're looking for. So if you click intent at the top here in commercial and transactional, we then click apply. This cuts it down to 242, which is a little bit more manageable. Now, just scrolling through some of these phrases, I know that not all of these would necessarily target a single page. So what I want to do is firstly understand which of these keywords would all be clustered as related keywords. So someone searching HR software could also search best HR software, online HR software pricing, HR systems software, potentially. All those keywords are keywords that we'd want to rank one single page for because the relationship between them is all the same. The one user could search each of these keywords expecting to see the same solution appear. Where this might be different is HR software for small businesses. So you're only going to have small businesses that search this keyword. You wouldn't necessarily have an enterprise firm searching a keyword such as that. And we can actually run a check on that. So if I put HR software for small businesses into Google, we can see that we've got a slightly different set of results. So we've got our small business listing, which was on the original HR software listing at the top. We've got a Reddit thread. We've got Charlie HR, and they've got a dedicated page for HR software for small business. We've got Rippling. We've got Sage, who do have an HR software for small business page. We've got Personio as well that also have a HR software for small business page. And you can see because they've got a URL that has the phrase HR software for small business, or in this case, small business in the URL path. Now, of course, this removes the context that users might call themselves a small business, even if they're not a small business. But what we want to do is categorize these keywords into clusters to identify how many different pages we might want to create out of this. So once we've got a list of our keywords, what we want to do is step 3, which is essentially generate a cluster and a page type using AI. Now, when we started working with Suzanne some 6 years ago, we did not have the privilege of being able to do this. We had to do all of this manually. Thankfully, with the likes of ChatGPT and Claude, we can expedite this part of the process. So what we want to do is export this list just into a Google Sheet of some kind. This will give us all our keywords. What we then want to do is copy this into ChatGPT. And I've given you a prompt in the dashboard that you can quite simply copy. And what this is going to do is essentially group all of these keywords, all the related keywords into a cluster, and then tell us the type of page that should be generated for that cluster. So I've just pasted the prompt, a cluster. So copy the prompt, paste it in ChatGPT with the list of keywords, and then hit submit. Now I'm just going to ask it to download the output into a CSV, and we're going to add it into our existing raw data list from Ahrefs. Okay, so I've just downloaded my list and I'm just going to open it in a new Google Sheet. Now, the one thing I will add as a huge caveat is do double check the clusters, double check the page type and the keywords, just to make sure that it looks like it makes sense. But essentially the output now gives us all nicely clustered keywords and an indication of the type of page that we should be creating from those keywords. Awesome. So what I've done is I've just tidied up the sheet a little bit. So it just removed any non-applicable ones with a human eye. And I've put all my raw data from Ahrefs into the tab. I've then created two more sheets. So the first one is keyword target. So what we subsequently want to do is map our keywords onto a sheet that looks a little bit like this. So at the top, we've got cluster, we've got the keyword, average monthly searches, the cost per click, the intent, and the page type. So these are the fundamentals that we want to add when doing a keyword research piece. The columns G to M, this is all Google Search Console data. So Google Search Console, if you're not aware, this is Google's free tool that essentially shows us how Google is showing our site to the world and how users are finding our website. So it will show us all the queries that we're appearing for. It will show us all the clicks, and it will essentially give us a bit of insight if we've got any issues around indexing and crawling, basically. Now, I will add that the Google Search Console platform does aggregate and filter out quite a lot of data. So it won't show us absolutely everything. You can get access to everything via a paid extension, but I won't go into that today. Why is it useful to have Google Search Console data? Well, we don't want to unintentionally create new content targeting keywords that actually we've already got content that Google shows us for, because that will cause something called cannibalization, which means that we have 2+ pages targeting the same keyword, same intent, and subsequently Google just won't show either of those pages, or they're less likely to. So we want to make sure that we're choosing keywords that we have a very low number of impressions for, or better yet, 0 impressions. So what I'm going to do is just populate this to show you what a good complete keyword research document would look like. So what I've done is I've just copied everything from our HR software clusters from ChatGPT into here. And now what I'm going to do is run a VLOOKUP so that we can get all the data for these 3 columns here from our Ahrefs raw data. So I've now populated this side of the spreadsheet using a VLOOKUP. This isn't a course on Excel, unfortunately, but just to give you a run through is how this works. So equals VLOOKUP. B is the keyword that we're looking up. So this is the item that we're looking for. This is the sheet where we're looking for it. So the raw data from Ahrefs, this is down here. This is all of this. I've then given the range that I'm looking for, that keyword, which in this case is listed here. I've then given the column to look down, so column 4. So I started my search here going all the way across. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So column E, but it's done numerically for some reason. And then we just add false at the end. And then this pulls the correct average searches from the sheet. Then this pulls the correct average searches from the raw data from Ahrefs sheet. And then we do the same for CPC, and we do the same for intent. So I did say that you can get all the data out of Search Console, but you need to use Search Analytics for Sheets. So if you come into extensions and quite simply search for Search Analytics for Sheets, sign up to it, and you can get all your Search Console data listed from this extension. Now, for the sake of the video, I'm not going to go through and cross-reference absolutely everything. But this is a really useful tool to pull this data at speed. The final part to the keyword research piece, if you're really into your automations, is we've actually built our own keyword research tool. And this pretty much does everything I've just walked through in one workflow. So we provide it a domain and seed keyword, then does all the keyword research, it clusters everything, it then does the search console analysis and pushes it into a Google Sheet. The output of that sheet looks a little bit like this. So it's a bit more detailed than the one I've taken you through, but it does mean that we can expedite the keyword research process quite significantly, which is always super helpful. So I'll link to the video where I actually walk through how to build something like this. If you're interested in sort of stuff, then drop me a DM. Step 3, this is content optimization. And this is a natural carryover from our keyword research piece. So the first step within this is page strategy. And this is very much determining whether we need a new page or not. So again, if I go back to our mock keyword research data here, we can probably, if we have a look at the clusters and the keywords against the page types, we could probably find a justification to create a different page for each of these clusters. So for example, our HR software seed keyword and related keywords, this is a primary solution page. We know that we're going to use our homepage for that. Best HR software, this is suggested a comparison or a buyer guide. We've got HR software UK. This could be a location based if we're global, but would probably target our homepage. HR software small business, yeah, this would be an SMB sort of solution page. And then we've got best HR software for small business. So this would be an SMB comparison page. HR software pricing, we probably want a standalone pricing page. So the page type is usually a good indicator of whether we need a separate page or not. But again, it's always worth checking just to make sure. The best way to check is to just Google some of these keywords. So I've already Googled HR software. If I put in best HR software, and have a look at the results, we can see we've got a listicle at the top, we've got ourselves, we've got a Reddit thread, we've got another listicle. So interestingly, HiBob actually created a best HR software listicle, even though they rank for the HR software full term, which we can see if we go back to our HR software listing, we've got HR Bob and their homepage ranking for that. So they've created a listicle page that now ranks nicely for best HR software. Got another homepage there. So it's a little bit of a mix of a set, but I would still suggest having a comparison page. Clearly for HiBob, it's not cannibalized it in any way, which is pretty awesome. So we knew from the Suzanne example that HR software, that's fundamentally the core part of the business. So that was always going to be the homepage. The next step with this is doing a competitor comparison. And by this, I mean analyzing competitor content structures and then using AI to essentially identify any gaps. So Google will typically look for a common theme of what the content says and how it's structured. And what we want to do is structure our page so it aligns with that theme. So again, if I was to run this for Suzanne, fresh out the bat, let's assume that we didn't rank our page number 1 for HR software. And let's have a look at some of the competitors that do. I will be having a look at the types of content that they feature. So let's have a look at Zelt HR, Bright HR, and HiBob. And what we're looking really is the types of things that they talk about. So they've got some social proof, they've got a platform overview, which is all clickable. So showing us a bit more on the feature side. They've got a run through of their logos, why we should choose them, a few testimonials, and some FAQs. Let's have a look at Bright HR. They've got a bit more above the fold here. So they've got 3-stack benefit, a book your demo. They've got a secondary CTA, which is get a price online. They've given a breakdown some of the features. On 2 sides, they've also got a logo banner. They link off to more of their other features and then closing off some testimonials and insights. Awesome. And then let's come on to HiBob. Really nice above the fold, request a demo, take a tour, some social proof up at the top. Got a nice sort of animated GIF, which gives a bit of insight into how the platform works for the users. They're also targeting different core functions of the HR role, targeting different industries on the homepage as well. They've gone vertical led, depending on who's visiting the site, finance, payroll, business leaders. They've got some integrations, which is a common way to significantly increase the number of pages on your site, which, if done properly via programmatic SEO, can be a really good way to grow your traffic quite quickly, using programmatic for integration pages. Okay, cool. Now, again, as in the past, we used to have to map all this quite manually and then start building a structure based on, again, the inputs that we got from the client insights document, but also what Google is wanting to see. Now, what I've done is given you a prompt so that we can get AI to do most of the legwork. So again, I'm going to fire up ChatGPT. I'm going to run a new prompt, literally just paste the prompt directly in, but fill in your context. So your primary domain and competitors as well. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, so I now added Suzanne, Zelt, Bright, and HiBob. From experience, 5.2 is pretty good at giving at least a handful of insights that we can take and run with. So at the start, we've got a nice sort of summary of our positioning versus the competitors. If we scroll down to essentially the summary, it's given us a bit of a breakdown as to what we can include. So number one, no strong upfront articulation of daily pain and admin relief. Too technical product centric, so it's not problem centric. So of course, thinking about positioning and messaging around clarity on outcomes. Lack of explicit UK centric reassurance early on. Messaging feels generic. Weak emotional pulls and call to action. So I think we've got a really good basis here of what we need to do to our page. And as we scroll up, it's very much focused on the positioning. Okay, now for this next bit, what we want to do is use that feedback to get a bit of an outline of a structure as to how this content should be created. So there's sort of two ways you can do this. Firstly, you can either use a writer and an expert at a business to take that and start structuring the content based on the sort of template that you have. But we can also use GPT to give us a bit of an outline of what that should look like. What we then need to do is take the outputs, put it into a Google Doc. This essentially becomes like a brief for a writer. And I always recommend having a writer create the actual content from someone that knows everything about Suzanne in this case to do with the business. Of course, when we worked with Suzanne and ranked this all these years ago, we didn't have, the privilege of being able to use AI to structure all this. We had to do it quite manually. And I personally think that process is a little bit redundant these days. But what I would do as part of the briefing process is just make sure that the sections that it's outlined align with the sections with the URLs that are ranking on that first page. So what I would do is go back to my SERP. I would have a look at the domains that rank for it and just make sure that the brief outline is at least similar in structure to the outline that is common across those pages. Now, when it comes to creating the content, as an agency, we don't like to influence the writers too much because we don't want them to write for SEO. We want them to write from experiences and we want them to write more business focused than SEO focused. So typically what we will do is when we were crafting the page for Suzanne, for example, there's obviously a couple of things that can weight the signals more in your favor. And if you go back to your keyword research piece, what we want to do is try and naturally incorporate the sort of secondary terms or the NLPs, the natural language processing phrases that are related to our seed keyword throughout the copy. So for example, in this case, we've got HR software system, we've got HR software solutions, HR software tools, HR software applications, company HR software, employee HR software, for example. When we first did this a number of years ago, the types of secondary keywords were slightly different. Broadly speaking, the way in which Google sort of scores a page is ensuring that the important items sit as high up at the page as possible, which is why in your URL, you want to try and have a mention of that seed keyword. If, in this instance, it's not a homepage and it was a solution page we were targeting. We then want to have the seed keyword in the opening header text. So this is known as the H1. So if you actually inspect the element, you can see that this is the H1. Again, these are smaller signals as Google evolves its algorithm, but they're still signals nonetheless that you should try and comply with. So we've got the seed keyword in H1. We've then got a variation of the seed keywords. In this case, it's modern HR software in the opening introduction straight after. And then in the subsequent H2s, we've also got the seed keyword as well. So if you look above the fold, we've got several mentions of the seed keyword and secondary keywords indicating to Google the importance of that keyword. So without trying to sort of influence the writer too much, because we do not want them to write for SEO. We want them to write from a customer perspective, a prospect perspective, and really sort of following the positioning strategy that we've outlined. But it's always good to just try and get references to the seed keyword as high up as you can. And then as we scroll down, we will sprinkle, so to speak, naturally those secondary keywords throughout the copy. But the absolute critical thing is just making sure that you're addressing prospects, problem solutions throughout, and we're not writing content just to tick the SEO box. I cannot stress that enough. And I briefly touch on it in semantic best practice. So ignore the jargon a little bit here. Just ensure that we try and cover those secondary keywords in as many places as we naturally can, and then we can optimize and iterate from then on. The final part to this is just making sure that we do a reference to that CRM data and just essentially trying to find any of those longer tail secondary keywords that maybe haven't come up in the keyword research tools that we can reference throughout our copy. Step 4, this is internal linking. Probably one of the most important things that you can do to get any form of SEO success. Now, internal linking is quite simply the concept of one of your pages on your site linking to another page. So if you've got a site that's made up of hundreds of pages, you highly likely already have hundreds of internal links throughout it without even knowing. So when you have a navigation on your site and that navigation links to many different solution pages, for example, these are all technically internal links. Now, the anchor text, so the linking text we use, and the position of an internal link have huge bearing on how much power, or in technical terms, page rank, is passed from one page to another. So optimizing the internal link structure is hugely important. I'm going to run through a couple of ways in which you can do that. So this is just a quick diagram just showing you how the internal link system works. So let's go into opportunity hunting. So the first part is you can actually find these opportunities with a site operator search in Google. So if I go to sitesuzanne.com, I know that their blogs are made up of the URL path HR-blog, and we're looking for HR software. And what this does is this will find any mention of the phrase HR software across any URL that has HR-blog in the URL path. And we can see that we have plenty of them. Now, the one thing that this will also include is if we have HR software or our keyword in the navigation, essentially in a template, this will pull up every single page. So what we're trying to find is an instance where the HR software keyword is used within the content. So let's have a look at this URL here. Now I can already spot quite a few instances in this case. Let's see how many mentions. So we've got quite a few mentions of HR software all throughout, and it doesn't look like we actually link from any of these pages. So this would be a really good page for us to link back to our homepage using an HR software phrase. Now, a couple of things to remember with internal linking. The higher up the internal link, the indicator of importance that internal link is to the reader and subsequently to Google. So remember I said that Google sort of scores things from the top down. So things at the top tend to be more important than the things at the bottom. Well, if we have an internal link in the opening sort of introduction pointing to another page, that's going to indicate to Google that that is an important page. And the anchor text, so the keyword rich linking text that we're using, will also be deemed as significant to that page. Now, the best way to create an optimal internal link structure isn't just linking your seed keyword hundreds and hundreds of times back to your target keyword, because that would be seen as manipulative. What you want to do is use your seed keyword, but also use your secondary keyword as linking text back to your solution page. And then you also want to throw in a handful of sort of generic linking text like click here, see more, but don't use those in the sort of prime real estate position. So don't have a click here internal link, in the opening sort of 40 or 50 words of your article, because it would just be a waste of that link, basically, because we're not going to maximize the amount of page rank that you can use. So again, we want to use our seed keyword, we want to use secondary keywords, then we want to use some generic keywords, all as anchors pointing back to that single target page. So the quick, easiest and cheapest thing to do is just go through all of your blogs where you mention that target keyword. Okay, so that's a landing page. So the quickest, easiest, cheapest way to get started with internal linking is really to go through existing articles and just link where you've mentioned the target keyword and haven't linked back to your target solution page. So again, I could internally link from this phrase here back to a solution page. Now, again, huge caveat. There's lots of science that can go into creating the perfect internal link map. This is very much showing how to get started with internal links. But like any link that you build externally or internally on your site, just ensure that you're not using the same seed keyword hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, as I said, because it would be seen as manipulation by Google, and you run the risk of potentially getting not necessarily a penalty, but you may be deranked for it. Now, I could spend hours going through how to craft the perfect internal link map. This is very much showing you how to get started with it. So what I would do is go through your list of pages that maybe already mention your target keyword. I would then also have a look at how much traffic those pages are driving, and start with the top driving pages with an optimized internal link, and just go a handful at a time, seeing if it has any impact on ranking the target page that it's linking to. If you notice after a week or two there's no impact, then do a few more and just build up to it quite slowly. The last thing you want is a Google crawler to visit your site and there's an indirect proportion of internal links pointing to one solution page with, hundreds of optimized link anchors pointing to that page as well. So slowly kind of build up to it. If you're new to this, once you get into more advanced sort of SEO tactics, you can actually craft an internal link map with different sort of padded out anchors, mix of generic and brand and things like that, so that it feels sort of more natural and less manipulative. The second thing you can do is using Ahrefs internal link opportunity finder. So if I jump back into Ahrefs and then I'm going to jump into the Cezanne domain. On the left-hand side, come down to internal links. I'm going to select exact URL, and this will actually show you all the internal links pointing back to that target URL. So this is kind of the flip side. This will show what's already linking and potentially how you can better optimize that internal link. And we can also have a look at the internal link anchors. Now, of course, this is a homepage that we're ranking for HR software. So there's going to be lots of different anchors for this specific URL, which is great in the sense of, it's going to look very much padded out. It's not going to look manipulative or anything like that. But naturally, it's going to skew it away from the seed keyword. So this is a really good way to keep a high level view on the internal links that you're building for your site. Now, if you do operate in WordPress, then there are plenty of plugins that you can use. So Link Whisper is a very popular one, used amongst many clients and friends that I know. So I highly recommend using this. It essentially allows you to add a target keyword for each page. Link Whisper will go through all your pages and suggest how to naturally integrate that link with your target keyword into that page, so it can automate a lot of this for you. This final one is a little bit more on the advanced side. So if you have a web crawler like Screaming Frog, for example, so I've used this for many, many years, you can export all the internal links with the anchor text of a target domain. Now, I'm not going to go through that today on this video. I have done other videos on that before in the past, but what I have given you is a Google app script down here that will allow you to group all your anchors for specific pages so that you can understand your anchor text distribution. Now, if none of that makes any sense to you, let me just show you an example of what this looks like. So here we've got one brand on the left-hand side. And what we've done is we've used the Google app scripts that essentially allow us to identify the most commonly used phrases as internal link anchors throughout the site. And why is this really useful? Well, ideally, we don't want to have unoptimized anchor text as the number one internal linking anchor across the site. We want to have it optimized in some way, or at least partially optimized with a target keyword. And again, if we roll this out at the template level, so if we tweak that anchor text so that it's partially optimized, that's going to have more of a significant impact site-wide because it will roll out across hundreds of different pages, or in this case, 564 pages in one instance, instead of us having to go through and doing that one by one. Now, to implement this Google Apps script, super straightforward. If you just copy the script, go into extensions, Google Apps script, and what you can do is basically just paste the script down here and then hit run. And then it will live populate directly in your Google Sheet. Again, I could probably do a whole video on this, but for the purposes of time, I am briefly running over it. But using Screaming Frog, getting all your internal link data, then using a Google Apps script to understand how optimized it is a really good way to understand the lay of the land of the internal link structure across your site. Step number 5 is technical SEO. One of the biggest mistakes that I see in technical SEO is that many users add far too much weight to its importance with B2B. So I think the first thing is to really assess how critical it is to your business. And the way you can do this is pretty much looking at the number of pages you have on your site. So broadly speaking, if you're a site that is maybe only made up of a couple of hundred pages, I would say you do not need to spend that much time on technical SEO. There's a few fundamentals you need to do, mainly around indexing, but I would not worry too much on spending vast amounts of time trying to fix absolutely everything. Typically with e-commerce sites, you have hundreds of thousands of pages because of various different products and category listings. And therefore, you need to pay more attention to technical SEO. The second part to this is fixing things at the template level instead of just at the page level. So, for example, if Suzanne HR and any other sort of B2B site, you might have maybe 8, 9, or 10 different templates. You'll have your homepage, your about page, maybe a solution page, a blog page, a pricing page. These are essentially pages that have different templates from one another, and then you'll have several pages that sit within that template. So, for example, the blog has its own blog template, and within the blog, obviously, we have hundreds of different articles. So then how do we go about assessing sort of technical SEO? And the one thing that I want to start with is site speed. Again, I think there's too much emphasis put onto site speed and really trying to get the metrics down by 0.3 seconds and all of this. Look, broadly speaking, if your site loads relatively quickly, and by that I mean you test it on your 5G, so within a couple of seconds you don't get agitated and want to leave. Your employees also have the same experience, maybe from a different IP, or also on 5G, for example. That's not actually a bad litmus test just to run. I know that seems super untechnical, but actually the eyeball test is usually the best test to do with this. Now, when we start and we kick off a new account, we will always run a thorough PageSpeed Insights audit anyway, because we need to understand whether there are deficiencies at the page template level. Best way to do that is if you go to PageSpeed, just Google PageSpeed Insights, and then add each of your 10 templates into the URL. Again, if you use a crawler, you can do this all at once, or you can do it one by one. This shouldn't take you too long. So let me use an example from Suzanne. If I go to one of their blog listings, what we can see, everything runs pretty quickly. Now, we don't need to go into the depths of this. This says that we've failed on Core Web Vitals, which means that we're not in the green for at least 3 of the 5. Which looks great. So we're in 2 of the 5 here. Now, again, you can spend endless resources improving the time to first byte to be sub 1 second, or the first contentful paint to be under 2 seconds. Fundamentally, as long as the page is loading quick to the user, which again for me is sort of 1 to 2 seconds, that is sufficient. And it's up to you about how much time and resources you want to spend increasing page speed, but it has a very quick diminishing curve for me. So it's totally up to you. I would not get too worried about trying to get this to a perfect score, to be totally honest with you. And if you hire an agency that is spending 6 months trying to repair site speed on a site that is a couple of 100 pages, big red flag, usually. The second part, and probably one of the more critical things, is understanding page indexing. I would say one of the more fundamental issues is page indexing. If Google can't index your content, you can't serve it to a user, and subsequently, you cannot generate any pipeline from that site. This is not Suzanne's site. I'm not going to sort of show under the hood of their site. This is just a test site of ours that we've run. So critically to indexing, and then Google's been quite good over the last few years to actually give reasons as to why maybe some pages aren't being indexed. A couple of the things that I would check first and foremost is the discovered currently not indexed and crawled currently not indexed. One of the typical issues I see across many new client sites as to why URLs fall into this bracket is, one, it's very thin on content. You've got to bear in mind that it costs Google time and money to index content, to have it all rendered and then serve it to a user. If they feel that the content isn't sufficient, it's very light on the ground, there's no obligation for them to serve that content. So really look critically at your content. The second thing is a lack of authority. So if your site is relatively new out the ground, maybe you've not really had any users visit that site before, maybe it's not actually ranking on Google, then you need to essentially run a backlinks campaign, you need to run PR campaigns, you need to run even social media campaigns just to get people visiting the site, ideally through Google Chrome, because Google will use those signals as an indication that your site is of importance. And then that should help put it out of the index, because Google realizes that, oh, this site is important, people want to find it, let's serve it. These are things that also help trigger brand searches. So people are looking for your brand and they can't find it. That's bad user experience. So Google will be more incentivized to subsequently serve your website in their index. So those are a couple of things that I would check if you have a vast number of URLs being featured in discovered, currently not indexed, or crawled, currently not indexed. The third thing that I would check is come into your settings, and what we want to do is check crawl fail rates. So again, if the Google crawler is having issues actually getting to your site and loading it, then that's naturally going to affect indexing issues, right? So if you come into the crawl settings, you can actually see whether it's had a significantly high fail rate or not. And we want to make sure that this fail rate is as close to 0 as we can day to day. If you've got problems with your hosting provider, this can naturally cause this to spike. And then the final thing to check is just making sure that you've never had a manual action. So Google hasn't gone in, penalized the site and pulled it from the index. That is about 99 or 95% of technical SEO that you need to know for sites that are only a couple of 100 pages, maybe up to sort of 300-400 pages or not. If you've got a site greater than 1,000 pages, one of our sites has over 1 million pages in the B2B space. We spend significantly more time on technical SEO on that type of site. Step number 6 is building backlinks. And although I put this as number 6, this is the single most important activity you can do to gain any success from SEO. And I will say that the more competitive your industry is, so the more valuable that those keywords are to driving pipeline for your business, the more important it is to build the right types of backlinks. And what I've done is I've just given a brief sort of run through of 3 backlink sort of tactics that you can do to essentially build these for your business. But I have done a number of separate videos around this, and we'll continue to do more videos around this specific tactic in the future. So what is a backlink? Firstly, a backlink is any third-party site that links to your website. Why are these great? Well, Google sees them as a vote of confidence, or almost like a vouch for your business, and therefore they use those as a signal to indicate that you should be ranked higher and shown to more people. Very simply put. Of course, there's lots that go into link building. Different types of links have different levels of importance, and it's important that you build the right types of links as well. So if you want an indication of how many links and types of links you need to build, the best place to start is having a look at the links that your competitors have. So again, if I Google HR software, and then I have a look at the sites that are maybe ranking, what I want to do is have a look at, Bright HR, they've got 4.7k backlinks from 799 domains. People Managing People, this URL's got 236 links from 140 domains. The Zelt app, 2,000 links from 700 domains. So, we're talking about needing to potentially build hundreds of domains, or thousands of backlinks, I should say, from hundreds of different domains for us to really have an opportunity to rank at the top here. And you'll notice Suzanne HR, we've built 4,000 backlinks from nearly 1,300 domains. And this is done from a variety of different activities, from PR, events, digital PR, infographic outreach, mentions in the likes of Forbes. Like, there's so many different types of links that we've built for these guys over the years. And that's what sort of kept us up there. So where can you start with this? Well, again, let's say you've just got your subscription to Ahrefs. You want to get started straight away with link building. The best place to start is broken link reclamation. So if I come into SuzanneHR.com, on the left-hand side, Ahrefs actually gives us a segment on broken backlinks. If I go to all domains, so this essentially shows us any links from third-party sites that are linking back to us, and the link is going to a 404 page, so a dead page. Now, this is bad because we will not get the page rank from the third-party link if it goes to a 404. So none of that power counts, so to speak. Now, of course, we work with these guys, so we're pretty hot on broken link reclamation, which is why there's only a handful of them that we can see at the moment here. So what I'm actually going to do is go to maybe one of the other providers. Let's have a look at Cypher. Okay, Cypher, we've got quite a few more. So straight at the top here, we can see that they do have a link from halo.com, a DR75. So this is 75 out of 100. This is relatively strong, to be totally honest with you. And it's linking to a page that's broken on the Cypher site according to Ahrefs. So yeah, we can see that this is a 404. Let's have a look and let's see if we can actually find this. Okay, so they've actually quoted them in a source. So 56% of employees believe that managers should update their skill support remote team. And if I click the Cypher link, yeah, this is linking to a 404. So from our perspective, we could actually reach out to the author of this blog here and outline that they're linking to an article that's showing us a 404, which is bad user experience, and request that they link to us instead. Now, of course, we would need to provide the statistic or maybe some content, create some content around that statistic, and then give them the URL for them to link to. So in this case, what I'd probably do is a couple of things. Is firstly, I would go to contact and go through their general inquiries and just sort of say, hey, I was just reading your URL, which talks about how to manage a team when you're a remote manager. I noticed that I was just reading your article about what makes sort of top leaders, what makes a great leader. But I actually noticed that one of your sources were broken. It's this one here. Do you want to feature our source instead, which is XYZ? So a really good way to essentially kind of poach links from competitor sites that are adding no value to the source domain. And if I go back into Ahrefs, Cypher have got hundreds of these, so really they need to be tidying this up, because this could in itself be a whole outreach campaign. We've got 100 links here. I'd probably sort them by Although DR, of course, isn't the best signal out of context, it still gives us an indication as to which URLs and, well, which domains, I should say, are the strongest of the list provided. And we've got some strong ones here. Like, we've even got links from the Metro, Spiceworks, Creative Blog, Run as well. So really, really strong domains that we can potentially infiltrate with content that is live and relevant to the users, capitalizing on where Cypher have a load of broken links. The second part is link reclamation. So this is essentially reaching out to any authors or any content that talk about our brand but maybe don't link to us. And again, the best way to do this is using a site operator search. So in this case, I would look for mentions of Suzanne, or I should put Suzanne HR, but not include SuzanneHR.com domain. So this means that anywhere that has been mentioning the phrase Suzanne HR, but of course isn't the Suzanne domain. So, and then what we can do is check all of these sort of individually to see whether we've had the links or not. Now, a lot of these are profiles. You may also just want to try an abbreviation of the brand name, for example. And this is a little bit more manual, I'll be honest. Another way that you can expedite it is setting up a Google alert, for example. And in some cases, if you Google the brand name, and depending on, sort of the size of your business, having a look at the news column as well, and just sort of seeing if a journalist has covered you, or maybe one of your campaigns maybe hasn't attributed a link back to you, you can then re-pitch out back to them and just ask if you can have a link inserted. So an example down here, this is from one of the campaigns that we ran quite a long time ago. These guys, HR Magazine, have actually covered one of our stories, one of our data campaigns, but we can see that they haven't linked to the Suzanne HR domain. So potentially we can reach out to this journalist, Rachel, up at the top here, and ask if she would feature a link where she talks about Suzanne HR. Really, really good way to get links, usually quite easily as well, because the story's already been written, we've already been credited. It's an easier sort of conversation to have. And this campaign is actually a beautiful segue into the third part, probably the more exciting part of link building, which is sort of digital PR, high-end PR. Now, this is the notion of creating exciting, newsworthy, primary data-led stories that get natural pickup. So we've run a number of these for Suzanne across many of our different clients over the years. Another one we ran was a study on the trust in HR. So post-COVID, we actually asked employees' feelings, how they felt about HR. And it gives us lots of nice sort of data points that we can then pitch into HR journalists, for example, with the sole objective of trying to get that link back to the Suzanne HR website. So we have plenty of different avenues that we can go down. We'll ask several different questions, essentially just trying to find different sort of key data points that we can create several stories out of. If I then put this URL into Ahrefs, you can see how many direct links that this article in itself gains. We had 85 different URLs linking back to the Suzanne site, all citing this study. And what happens is campaigns such as this allow us to accumulate a vast number of high quality, highly relevant domains back into the site in a very short window that signals to Google, oh, this site is popular, I need to show them more. I need to make them more visible. Again, I'm simplifying, quite a great deal, but that's the broad sort of context of the process of that. So we create these linkable campaigns, these newsworthy campaigns. We get them listed on sites that are highly relevant. So for example, Culture Shift, which is also in the HR software category. I wouldn't say they're a direct competitor to Suzanne HR though. They've featured it, they've used our data, and they've given us a nice link back to the website. Now, when we accumulate all the links back to this page becomes essentially powered up. And then what we can do is use our learnings from the internal link section to internally link back to our solution page that we're trying to rank using the target keyword as the anchor text. So in this case, we link back to the homepage using the anchor text HR software within this page. So this means that all that power that Trust in HR page has accumulated, we are passing it through that internal link back to our homepage. And again, by running several of these campaigns over the years, accumulating hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of links, we can essentially power up the pages that we want to rank for the keywords that we're trying to rank them for, if that makes sense. So we use the external backlinks to grow the overall authority of the site. Then we use internal linking to strategically point that power to the pages that we want to rank. What I will add is that these campaigns are a bit of an IP for social media for our agency. We've done them since day one. We love doing them. We're good at getting success from them. We've run them across a vast number of our clients in many different verticals, building links from all sorts of different domains. So this was another one that we ran, which was essentially a poll that we ran to the UK public to ask how many people had lied on their recruitment process or on their CV. And it turned out 32% of people had. And this was quite a newsworthy story that we could pitch into many sort of different performance management softwares, HR softwares, different types of verticals. And we got loads of coverage for this client as well. And this last section here on building links is essentially looking at the process by which to find those emails, create the email, and then send it. The easiest way to get started with this is using the link intersect tool in Ahrefs. And what we want to do is find links that our competitors have that we don't. So in this case, we're Suzanne HR. And then we might want to have a look at links that people managing people have got, Hi Bob, and let's say Bright HR, and then show link opportunities. So these links would essentially be a starting place for us, and sort of, we would say we need to acquire these links because these are links that Google are expecting to see. We'd then run them through an email identifying service such as Email Hunter. So we use Email Hunter to essentially provide the domains and then get the emails back. We will then run those emails through a tool like Never Bounce, which is essentially an email verification software. So this checks are the emails live? Are they going to bounce? Essentially, we want to have as clean list as possible. And then what we do is we put that clean list into BuzzStream, and we've used BuzzStream for about 7 or 8 years. So this is our email outreach tool. There are plenty more available, but this is the one that we use. So we find the links that our competitors have got that we don't. We then run them through hunter.io to identify the emails of those domains. We then run it through Neverbounce to check the deliverability of those domains. And then we will create the outreach sequence in BuzzStream. But the real art in this is the creativity of the data and the creativity of the campaign. The final step is step 7, which is tracking and reporting. So we do all this wonderful work. How can we quantify the success of it? So the first one is quite straightforward. So we want to have a look at how well or how much we've improved in the ranking for our core terms. And there's a number of standalone ranking tools that are great, such as SE Ranking. We used to use these guys quite a lot before using our own tools. The second part is coming back into Ahrefs, and this will show you, broadly speaking, how well you are ranking across all website terms, not just the ones that you're monitoring. So again, if we come into keywords, we go to new and improved keyword. We don't want to include brand in this, so remove that. And this gives us a nice bird's eye view on how well we are performing and improvements that we've made. Now, if you start working with social media, we provide a custom dashboard that records all the key performance metrics that you need to understand how well you are performing from an organic search perspective. So this will be tracking all your demo bookings, any resource downloads directly from organic. We also provide direct keyword rankings. So, we can see over a period of time how our rankings have changed. We also plug in CRM data. So absolutely critically, we want to understand the pipeline we're generating from the organic activities are yielding an ROI. And we do this by plugging in, say, HubSpot in this case, reviewing first page seen and seeing the pipeline value associated with the deal that has landed. Now, one of the common questions that we always get is, how can we associate or understand which keyword has led to which conversion? Now, unfortunately, we can't get the exact figures to know which keyword has generated, say, how much pipeline or which specific conversions, because Google do not give the data away for that. But there is a trick that you can do. If you go into your Google Search Console property, if you go into search results and filter by the page that triggered that conversion and the dates of that conversion, you should be able to see which queries drove clicks on that specific day. So let's say my conversion was on the 7th of October, for example, this year, and it was on my decisioning page. I can see, for example, that this keyword had 2 clicks on that day. So there's a high chance that that conversion probably came from this specific keyword. Now, it isn't perfect, but it gives you an idea as to the likely cause of that conversion. If you want to go one step further, then you can aggregate this data with your CRM data so that it will show in a table in Lookup Studio or Supermetrics or something like that. Now, one step beyond this is creating a blended data report, which essentially shows the pages that have triggered an organic conversion and then the queries from Google Search Console that triggered that day. I won't go through that today, but those are reports that we have done for some of our clients in the past. And I think that concludes us really nicely, and to remember that B2B is very, very rarely click and convert. There's usually several influences, from events to paid media to SEO to PR, that all have an impact on that decision maker deciding to request that demo. And I think that's super important. So what we're trying to do is maximize visibility through the means of ranking highly for keywords that we know prospects do search that are ready to buy. And then us leveraging blended reports, first page seen in the CRM, and seeing what the pipeline value of our organic activities has been over a period of time. And that about wraps up the course. So hopefully that was really useful for you guys. Now, if you want to have a bit of a checklist to go through this one by one, I've provided this on the very last page. You can download it as a CSV so you can work through it offline. Do feel free to pause, skip back, go to the various chapters. If you'd like to work with our SEO team, then click on the book call with Session Media and it will take you to a proposal page that looks a little bit like this. We'd love to have a chat about what your pipeline goals are looking like for your B2B SaaS going into next year. And just finally, if you like videos like this, please do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.